It was a crisp Monday morning, the kind of day when airports buzz with the quiet urgency of business travelers making their weekly commute. At JFK International Airport, a long-haul flight to London Heathrow was being prepped for departure. Flight attendants adjusted the crisp linens on the first-class seats, the coffee machines hissed to life, and the subtle scent of luxury perfumes and expensive colognes lingered in the air. In the spacious first-class cabin, passengers were already boarding, executives glued to their tablets, a movie producer speaking animatedly on the phone, and a few celebrities hiding behind sunglasses and discreet smiles. The mood was calm, the setting refined, as though the world beyond the cabin's sliding doors didn't exist. Then came a man, tall, poised, and dressed in a tailored navy blue suit that fit him so well. It was clear he either had impeccable taste or someone had curated it for him. His black leather shoes gleamed, and in his hand he carried a sleek carry-on bag, light enough to suggest he was a seasoned traveler. There was no assistant with him, no fanfare, no visible name tag or corporate entourage. Just quiet confidence. His name was Mr. Jordan Hayes, and he was about to take his seat in first class. At least, that's what he believed. As he approached his assigned seat, 3A, he was met with a surprised glance from a young flight attendant who stepped in front of him. Her tone, polite but strained, was laced with skepticism. "Excuse me, sir," she said, blocking his path, "may I see your boarding pass?" Jordan handed it over without hesitation, a slight smile on his face. She scanned it, then frowned. "I'm sorry, sir," she said curtly, "you're not on the list for first class." Jordan blinked, caught off guard. "That can't be right," he replied calmly. "This flight was booked weeks ago. I received a confirmation just yesterday." Before he could elaborate, the head flight attendant, an older woman with tightly pinned hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, approached. She glanced at the scene and, without waiting for context, gave Jordan a slow, judging once-over. He wasn't loud. He didn't wear a flashy watch. He didn't walk with the entitled air that so many first-class passengers wore like a second skin. That, perhaps, was the problem. To her, he didn't look like someone who belonged there. "We have strict seating policies," she said firmly. "This area is reserved for first-class passengers only. Please return to your assigned seat in economy." Jordan hesitated. He could have insisted. He could have pulled up the confirmation on his phone or even called someone from his team to sort it out. But something in the way she looked at him, in the dismissiveness that had nothing to do with airline policy and everything to do with assumption, struck a chord. He knew this moment for what it was. Still calm, but now quietly hurt, Jordan nodded. He offered no argument, made no scene. He took his boarding pass back, adjusted his bag on his shoulder, and walked down the aisle. Heads turned as he passed. Passengers whispered. Some watched with confusion, others with smugness, their expressions saying what they dared not speak aloud. "He probably tried to sneak up here. He must have been in the wrong cabin. Maybe he can't afford it." The humiliation was subtle, but it stung all the same. In the economy cabin, Jordan took his seat. It was cramped and loud, the polar opposite of what he'd paid for, and not what a man of his stature was used to. But he said nothing. Instead, he observed. He noticed how attendants rushed through the cabin with mechanical smiles, barely making eye contact. How they skipped passengers who didn't look like frequent flyers. How they treated passengers like cargo, just part of the job, not part of the experience. What no one on that flight knew, what no one even thought to imagine, was that Jordan Hayes wasn't just another traveler in a nice suit. He was the newly appointed CEO of Eastridge Air, the very airline whose colors adorned the plane. Just 2 weeks ago, he had taken over as chief executive officer after a major corporate shake-up. Rather than announce his leadership with grand press releases or flashy interviews, Jordan had opted for something unconventional. He wanted to see the truth. He wanted to experience the airline the way any other paying customer would, not as a VIP, not with assistants or PR handlers, but as a regular man in a seat. And now, he had. The flight crew's mistake wasn't in their system, it was in their assumptions. They had judged a passenger not by name, but by face. Not by class, but by status. And they had embarrassed not just a man, but the very person responsible for their future salaries. Jordan sat back, arms folded loosely, eyes scanning the cabin. His face gave nothing away, no anger, no gloating, no hint of what he planned to do next. But inside, he had already made up his mind. This wasn't just an incident. It was a symptom of a deeper problem, one that he now had the power to fix. The rest of the flight passed without incident. The attendants didn't return to check on him. There were no apologies, just the same disinterested service and the occasional sideways glance. When the plane touched down in London, Jordan gathered his belongings in silence. As he stepped off the aircraft, he didn't speak to the crew. He simply offered a tight-lipped smile and a polite, "Thank you," then disappeared into the terminal like any other passenger. But unlike every other passenger, Jordan Hayes walked away already drafting a plan in his mind. Not just for disciplinary action, but for company-wide reform. What had happened on that flight wouldn't be ignored. The crew had made a mistake, not just in customer service, but in judgment. And that mistake was about to change everything. 3 days had passed since the flight, and the memory of it still lingered in Jordan Hayes' mind, not because of the discomfort but because of the principle. Back in his corner office on the top floor of Eastridge Air's headquarters, Jordan reviewed footage from cabin cameras, analyzed passenger complaint logs, and skimmed through internal staff evaluations. It didn't take long to find a pattern. The airline's issues weren't rooted in logistics or budgets, they were rooted in people, in attitude, in a culture that had grown complacent and classist. Jordan had taken over the company with a mission to restore its declining reputation, and now, he had a first-hand case study. But he wasn't interested in public drama or flashy announcements. He wanted accountability with precision. Silently, he called for an internal review of the entire flight crew on the New York-London route. Names came up, incident reports surfaced, and beneath it all, a troubling trend was clear: favoritism, discriminatory behavior, and frequent passenger dissatisfaction. That was all the confirmation he needed. Without waiting for the next board meeting, Jordan scheduled a mandatory staff gathering at headquarters. The crew from the flight he had taken was summoned, along with a few others who'd been flagged in complaints. They arrived in the corporate briefing room unaware of what the meeting was really about. Some joked, some looked nervous, a few even scoffed as they spotted Jordan seated at the head of the long conference table, dressed in the same navy suit he'd worn on the flight. But this time, he wasn't silent. He stood, cleared his throat, and said firmly, 3 days ago, I was on one of our flights. I was publicly humiliated, refused the seat I paid for, and judged not by our booking system, but by the people meant to represent this company. Silence fell like a curtain. Faces paled. Some crew members shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. That experience was not unique to me. It reflects a culture problem, one that starts with the belief that some passengers deserve respect, and others don't. His eyes scanned the room. I was that undeserving passenger. There were audible gasps. The reality hit like a thunderclap. The man they had dismissed was their boss. The CEO. One of the senior attendants stuttered an apology, but Jordan raised a hand. This isn't about me. It's about every passenger who's been treated that way, and every one of you who thought you wouldn't be held accountable. Moments later, HR entered the room with folders in hand. Several employees were asked to step out and handed immediate terminations. Others were given written warnings and reassigned pending behavioral retraining. The message was clear: this was no longer the same airline. Jordan wasn't just correcting a mistake, he was reshaping a legacy. And this was only the beginning. News of the abrupt crew firing spread through Eastridge Air like wildfire. Whispers echoed in break rooms, text chains buzzed among employees, and staff forums lit up with debates. Some thought it was harsh. Others called it overdue. But everyone now understood one thing with perfect clarity: there was a new standard, and Jordan Hayes wasn't bluffing. In the days that followed the terminations, Jordan didn't rest. He gathered department heads, restructured the customer service division, and implemented a temporary freeze on promotions across all flight operations until every team completed mandatory retraining. But while the internal system stirred with change, the media remained in the dark, until someone leaked the story. A former employee, bitter from her sudden termination, shared her version of events with a niche aviation blog. Within hours, it was picked up by larger outlets. Headlines exploded. Airline CEO fired entire crew after being denied first-class seat. Undercover boss or corporate revenge. Eastridge Air scandal. What really happened on Flight 221? Public reaction was split. Some saw Jordan as a hero, finally holding an arrogant industry accountable. Others accused him of using his position to lash out in anger. But Jordan didn't respond with interviews or press releases. He let actions speak instead. At a company-wide virtual meeting, streamed live to over 14,000 employees across global hubs, Jordan addressed the issue head-on. No teleprompters, no PR team, just him and the truth. This company belongs to the people who believe every passenger, no matter their name or their seat number, deserves dignity, he said. We're not just flying planes, we're shaping experiences. The moment we forget that, we lose the right to call ourselves a service. The video went viral internally and was soon clipped and shared across social platforms. For many employees, it was a wake-up call. For others, it was a source of pride. Jordan's personal story ignited a wave of reflection across departments. Flight crews started speaking up about long-ignored issues. Ground staff shared ideas to improve training and morale. Even veteran pilots admitted that complacency had been creeping into every layer of the airline's culture. To reinforce the transformation, Jordan launched an internal initiative called Sky Level, a multi-phase program focused on empathy-driven service, diversity awareness, and anonymous passenger feedback audits. Every staff member, from cabin crew to executives, would be evaluated based on this new philosophy. Bonuses, career growth, and even leadership eligibility would be tied to performance under these values. Jordan knew real change wasn't about punishing a few, it was about lifting the bar for everyone. What began as a quiet experiment in observing customer service had evolved into a full-scale cultural reset. And though public attention began to quiet down, inside the airline, something loud was happening: accountability, purpose, and a rediscovered belief in doing the right thing. For the first time in years, Eastridge Air wasn't just staying afloat, it was preparing to soar. 6 months later, Eastridge Air was no longer the airline it once was, it was better. Passengers noticed the difference immediately: warmer greetings at check-in, more attentive cabin crews, and a genuine sense of care at every stage of their journey. Surveys showed a 35% increase in customer satisfaction, and positive reviews flooded social media, with many praising the airline's remarkable turnaround. Internally, morale had shifted too. Employees, now part of the Sky Level program, felt empowered and valued. Teams collaborated with new energy, and innovation flowed through every department. As for Jordan Hayes, he remained a quiet force behind the change. He never boasted about the flight incident or the firings, he didn't need to. His leadership was evident in the culture he cultivated. On a mild spring afternoon, Jordan boarded another flight, this time unrecognized, once again flying first class. The flight attendant approached him with a warm smile and said, "Welcome aboard, Mr. Hayes. We're honored to have you." He smiled back, not because he was finally acknowledged, but because he knew the respect was real, and it wasn't just for him. It was for everyone. As the plane ascended into the clouds, so did Eastridge Air, reborn from a mistake, and flying higher than ever.